We ready?
We'll call the meeting to order.
Commissioner Burling?
Here.
Commissioner Brzezowski?
Here.
Commissioner Mickey? Here. Commissioner Jerry?
Here.
Thank you.
There's an extra one here. And with that, I think we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll start with our announcements. Mary?
I currently don't have any.
Arbor Day schedule, or did?
I'll make that.
Yeah.
Do you want me to make that?
Yeah, we have announcement on Arbor Day. Okay.
It's in the agenda. We are announcing the date for the Combined Earth and Arbor Day on April 26th, Saturday from 10 to 2 p.m. And we welcome everybody. We look forward to doing the event again.
Thank you.
Chair Brzezowski, I have a short announcement too.
Okay, great.
Just in light of everything that's been going on in Southern California, I wanted to make note again of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan that Monterey Fire and DUDEC work so hard on. It can be found on either the Public Works website under the tab Community Wildfire Prevention Plan, or just direct link to ci.carmel.ca.us/CWPP for the plan.
Great, thank you, Justin. It might be good to get that in the Friday letter if it hasn't gone out already. Okay.
You okay?
And similarly, I guess just as a forest, you okay? Okay. As a Forest and Beach Commission body, I'd just like to acknowledge all the firefighters, first responders, and volunteers who've been working to contain and support the wildfire efforts in Southern California, and just a wish that all those that are affected are able to access resources in a timely manner to begin their recovery. And with that, I will open it up to public comments. Under the Brown Act, public comment for matters on the agenda must relate to that agenda item, and public comments for matters not on the agenda must relate to the subject matter jurisdiction of this legislative body. A reminder that hateful, violent, and threatening speech is impermissible in public comment as it disrupts the conduct of the public meeting. This is a warning that if any member of the public attending this meeting remotely violates the Brown Act by failing to comply with these requirements, that speaker may be muted. Members of the public are offered 3 minutes. Each person shall be limited to 3 minutes. And I think as we start 2025, if everybody could pay attention to the light, Yvette will give you a signal, and we're going to try and stick to the self-discipline around the 3 minutes in public comments. Do we have anybody today that would like to make a public comment before we begin today's session? Please come forward. Happy New Year. I said Happy New Year.
This is an email that I sent to the Forestry Department yesterday.
Could you talk into your microphone,
Oh,
please?
I'm sorry. This is an email I sent to the Forestry Department yesterday, and I'm going to read it for anybody that did not receive it or hadn't heard it. This
Do you
email
mind? You don't have to, but do you mind sharing your name
Oh, I'm
with us?
sorry.
Okay.
My name is
Just for the record. Thank
Alan
you.
McDaniel.
Yeah.
This email is designed to illustrate the type of activity taking place on the lot construction site adjacent to the south side of my property, the Hireman Project, corner of 5th and Carpenter. There has been much, but I allude here only to this past Saturday, the 11th. In the latter part of the afternoon, there appeared 3 men with saws, evidently for the purpose of cutting trees. 2 across the lot cutting oak branches, and 1 on the immediate south side of my house, already in the act of cutting lower branches from the protected redwood that stood there. He had stripped down the orange mesh indicating a protected tree. I asked him if he was there to trim the tree. The guy across the way hollered over, "No, we are taking it down. It is dead." To which I retorted, "No, it is not dead." The young man on the redwood job quit working and just stared at me like a deer in the headlights. The man across the way kept saying, "I have a permit, I have a permit." He reiterated this at least 10 times. We engaged in quite a battle of words, during which he stated the permit was signed by Justin Ono. He claimed to have Justin's cell phone number, which I asked for and he would not give me, but he proceeded to supposedly call Justin. I don't know if he did or not. Spoke with him briefly and then rapidly disappeared. They left before the young man on Operation Redwood could do any more harm. His intention was to take the tree down. Their truck bore the name Cruz Tree Service. I must state here that this tree, that the roots of this tree were most definitely intentionally damaged in earlier backhoe digging by a worker with Romo Construction out of Salinas, which was working for the Hireman project. Obviously an attempt to kill the tree and annex this piece of ground to the lot. I could say they failed, but they didn't. And I'll tell you why now. They returned yesterday and brazenly proceeded to take the tree down at the same moment I was sending this email to Forrester. The same moment. And the tree's gone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public people that would like to make a public comment?
Good afternoon and Happy New Year to all of you too. I just want to make a couple of comments. One, on 9th between Carmelo and Camino Real on the south side, there is a magnificent pine that has bark beetle. And I'd like somebody to go out there and check it out if they would. And also in front of the Normandy Inn, there's at least one major tree on Ocean that has bark beetle. And I think it's, you all would agree that it's easier to take care of the bark beetles before we have to take the tree down because of the cost of taking down those enormous trees. So I just wanted to let you know, because you've got a lot of trees in the forest to worry about and you can't check every one of them. So these several are in need of someone taking a good look at. And Justin, I want to thank you for recommending the people in Salinas to help me with my bark beetle problem. I really appreciate it. They did a great job. They're really nice people. And then let's see. The other thing is, I wish that when we have a problem, particularly I'm noticing it on the weekend, these trucks with men come in with their saws and they start cutting because they know that nobody in forestry is around, and most people in Carmel don't know that if you've got a problem on your property or you see something happening that's inappropriate in town, that you call the police. So I don't know how you do this, but I think it's worth a conversation between the commission and staff as to how we can deal with these people who come in and do work that are not authorized. They don't have a license. They don't have names on their trucks sometimes. And they're really quite belligerent when you ask them, well, do you have the city's approval for this work that you're doing? So I wanted to mention that to you. And there was a third thing, and guess what? I can't remember it. So anyway, I'm sure that it will come up later on in some fashion. But anyway, thanks for your work, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Melanie. Oh, wait, okay. It looks like we have one person on Zoom that would like to make a comment. And just before we proceed, just by way of information in our public process, that public comments at the beginning of a meeting ahead of any agendaized item are public comments that the commission receives, but receive no action at that meeting. So I don't want you to think we're being insensitive to any comments or concerns that people are raising about things that are happening or that they're observing in town. We take those matters quite seriously. We just can't take them as action items in this forum today. Okay, thank you. Rainey?
Go ahead.
Did she hear you?
Ramey, can you hear me?
Apparently not.
One more chance. Ramey, did you like to speak?
Is she muted still?
I can't unmute her.
Hit allow to talk.
Yeah.
Go.
Can anybody hear me?
There we go. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was muted and I wasn't able to unmute myself. Thank you. Ramey Allard with the Friends of Carmel Forest. First, I just wanted to thank Justin Ono and Tom Ford of the Forestry Division of Public Works for supporting Friends of Carmel Forest with respect to replanting the iconic trees, the iconic Monterey cypress trees along Scenic Path. Another one of our trees recently was topped. A new tree that was only about 5 feet tall had someone take the top off of it, clearly in an effort to see a better view of Point Lobos. And the unfortunate thing is, by doing that, it just bushes the tree out and it creates more of a block for them. If they would just leave it alone and let the tree grow tall, and they would ultimately be able to see underneath it like we see underneath most of the trees down there. For years, Friends of Carmel Forest has been challenged by homeowners on Scenic to not replant trees. There has been vandalism of our new trees in the form of topping, gross pruning, and complete cutting of the trunk. And not just one time on the same tree, but several times to the point that the tree has died. This past summer, we felt that it was important to educate the public and the homeowners on Scenic to the importance of the Monterey cypress along Scenic Path. We held our tree walk down there. It was very, very well attended, but I'm saddened to see that still some people insist on damaging our trees. We want to work with Tom and Justin with respect to educating the homeowners along Scenic to the importance, not the aesthetic importance, but the most important thing is the environmental importance of our scenic cypress trees, that they are a slope stabilization, they are wind deference, and they provide habitat. And they, lastly, create such a beautiful window to our ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramey. Any other public comment before we begin the business? Okay. With that, I think our first item of business is a status update by city staff on the pickleball interim rules. Thank you, Tom.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Chair and Commission and the public. My name is Tom Ford. I work in Public Works. And as you all may recall, the adopted interim rules for pickleball, which went into effect on December 20th, allow pickleball to be played on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The rules were intended to be in effect for 3 months, at which time the Commission would revisit the matter to perhaps send that to City Council. The purpose of today's agenda item is to update the Commission and the public on some matters that we had heard about primarily during the holiday break. So since the since the interim rules took effect, the city has received a number of calls regarding non-compliance with the restricted play schedule. I myself have been out almost every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I have not seen a single person up there. That's not at all. There clearly were people who were there who were playing on off days because we spoke with the police department. We had a meeting with Chief Tomasi and among other administrators who confirmed that on a number of occasions during the winter holiday, they paid a visit to the courts to remind the people that that play was prohibited on those days. However, apparently, despite the help that we received from the police and their assistance, despite their intervention, it appears as though, according to the complaints, it appears as though the problem was not alleviated. Now, I do want to say that I got the chance to speak with a couple of pickleball players, and I don't think none of us think that they're locals who are doing this. We presume perhaps that there were a lot of people during the holiday season who were visiting. I know that the people in the Monterey Pickleball Association, they have an organized club, and these people who are they can speak for themselves, but they're very well connected. They have great communication systems, and I find it hard to believe that the local peninsula pickleball players would not have been apprised on the new hours. And even if they weren't, it's my opinion that I think our 4 signs that we currently have up are very clear. Not that large; they're 8.5 by 11, but I think it's very clear what the rules are. So upon return from the holiday break, I was just alluding to a meeting that the administration had alongside the Chief Tomasi, and one of the proposed avenues during that meeting was the installation of lock pads on the nets, and that's actually a correction from the staff report. It says a lock on the gates. City staff is not recommending to lock the gates, because then tennis players would not be able to play. So I just wanted to make that correction, that one of the avenues that came up was locking the nets. This would have a couple of considerations. One would be that we would need reliable volunteers from the public on weekends, because the courts are open on Saturdays for pickleball play, as well as perhaps on some weekdays as well. I don't know if you had needed to speak to this, Justin, but I believe it was you who had said if it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., we wouldn't be able to have a guy up there at 5 p.m. It would need to be 4 p.m. closing time in order for us to ensure that we can reliably always have an employee go up to either lock or run.
Yeah, the majority of the public works maintenance workers work 7:30 to 4, with several working 7 to 4:30. But at this, 4 o'clock would kind of be the latest we'd be able to reliably get someone out there to lock the stuff up.
I believe we had discussed the beginning hours, perhaps being 10 a.m. being an option, so that would be more feasible for our crew as well. So there are, the end of the day, certainly we would not be able to lock up the nets if that were to be an avenue we choose. But perhaps moving the opening time or the start time from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. would allow more flexibility. Things come up all the time with our crews. We're immediately pulled off to do something else, and just something to consider.
I have a question. Does the city, or do you have a point of view around whether it's practical to think that you can take on that responsibility 3 days a week, morning and evening? I guess I'm just asking as against a backdrop of all the deferred maintenance we have on trees. It seems like we have a shared public works that has infrastructure, street. It's more just a practical question as to whether or not you feel the Public Works Department can sign up for that, right? Whether we should consider that as a practical solution.
It's a very real concern. You know, I mean, we're already you know, we want to do our due diligence. We're really investing a lot of time into this as is, and then committing ongoing staff time for possibly forever. If this interim, you know, if these interim rules end up panning out and that becomes adopted policy, then we effectively would be committing to allocating public works time at the courts indefinitely. So I can't say that I don't want to speak for other people, but that would be a huge commitment.
I mean, I don't want to say you have to hire a pickleball person. Like, I'm not suggesting that, but it is time, it is resources and time to commit to doing that.
Sure is.
Twice a day, multiple days a week, right? Has there been concern since after the holidays, since the first of the year? Are we seeing the same problem? Has there been any shift in the last week, for example?
There has been. So Public Works has received 0 calls after the holidays. Okay. Once Public Works had returned, might just be, you know, coincidental timing because that's when perhaps tourists left. But we haven't received a single call. The majority of calls that Chief Tomasi alluded to were all during the holiday break. And I have requested a call list. He is sending that over. I really thought that we'd have it before today, but I can speak in generalities and say there were a number of calls, 4 or 5 times where they physically went out, but I don't know the number of times since returning.
And Chair, another wrinkle to that is we don't work on Saturdays, so that would be another burden time-wise.
Yeah,
I mean, it would seem like any change in rules would take some time, awareness, and implement. Like, it would seem unusual to think that they would overnight.
Yeah.
You would implement, and it takes probably a while for the word to get out, to get on the pickleball, of whatever, all the WhatsApp channels and on the websites, etc. It just seems like it might naturally take a little bit of a little bit of time.
Now that I think about it, the feasibility of this came from so Pacific Grove has a very similar model. I believe one of their staff offices is located immediately next to the pickleball court, right? That would be great. That would be very convenient. We could totally do, you know, a flexible time schedule, and that really wouldn't be a big commitment, but that's not our situation, unfortunately. And then the last wrinkle in this, so to speak, is that the city does not own the nets. The nets, the pickleball players have, you know, been adamant proponents and have contributed a ton of materials and time, and I think they had said before that they had pressure washed the courts, among other things, purchased the nets. So those are privately owned. You know, they can certainly speak to their interest level. I have spoken with them, but they could certainly speak to their interest level in this. But it would be a lot.
Do you have an update, like, on our path forward in terms of the things that we're doing research on to understand, like, for example, the acoustifence or the pickle glass or what, you know, like, just in terms of what those do we have an action plan on how we're going to approach more information across these next 3 months?
Yeah.
Or I'm just curious, like, what our plan is,
Sure.
so that we think about when it comes time to reassess the interim order, like,
Right.
do we have a plan?
Yeah, great question. One of the local pickleball players had graciously reached out to me and offered to get in touch with someone on Acoustifence. I believe I told you last time that company called Acoustablock. I had reached out extensive, like 4 or 5 times, several voicemails, called their secretary, tried to get through to them, sent more than one email. I personally don't want to invest more time in that avenue. If they don't want to sell us a $60,000 or a $40,000 thing, then I'm not going to spend any more of my time on that. But the resident did, so that is an avenue that hope that great. If that pans out to be fruitful, wonderful. But I myself, be tough for staff to continue to invest time in that.
Okay. I have one other question that I had in response to some of the communications we've been receiving, and I don't know this is a question for city staff, where to look for, is we do have a noise ordinance, right, for the city generally, and then we have descriptions of character, neighborhoods, et cetera. It seems like the noise in, like, for example, in the Ocean Avenue in the commercial zone might be different than, do we differentiate like a commercial zone area versus a neighborhood?
Residential.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, it would seem that in a residential area that was 100% residential, there might be one characteristic, but that in a residential area that was, adjacent or contiguous to like a public park, right, for example, or a commercial zone, that it might be slightly different in character. So I'm just wondering, how as a city, like how should the commission think of that as we move forward, and do we have that in our ordinances, or do we
in the general plan?
In the general plan, because I think that does play a role. That that is a neighborhood that has a public park immediately adjacent to the community.
Right.
It's not a 100% residential area,
sure.
right?
And that area of the general plan that discusses sound, it does so at length. There's a lot of different sections.
Yeah.
It actually gives great guidance over the course of like 15 pages. That's where we got the 60 decibel level from, was a chart. So it's not codified. That's not law, the 60 decibels. So if play exceeds that, no one's breaking the law. They're breaking, the general plan, but yes, there are guidelines in there that pertain to residential areas, and that's why we had taken the measurements at the public-private property line, because
Correct.
it becomes a purely residential area at that delineation.
Right.
So our measurements are accurate to all of the rules that pertain to residential areas.
Right, so I'm just curious that just if we have any differentiation, like in our, how we think about like noise as a city. This is more just I'm curious, it's more an open question. How do we think about noise in a commercial zone versus noise in an area where we have a public park, right? It would be helpful perspective, I think, if we're able to have any city input or information on that moving forward. I think that would be useful.
I think we can come back to you with the information, what's in the community code and what's in the within the general plan. Yeah, because it does differentiate typically between commercial districts and residential districts. So we can come back with that information.
I believe most of the information we would return with was, I had a series of slides, I think on the very first presentation that was like the broad overview. It was like way too much info. It was like every piece of information you could ever want. There were a number of slides, or a number of pages worth of excerpts that I had copied and pasted, like that I think would pertain directly to your question.
Okay.
And one last thing I wanted to mention is that we are getting professional signs made. We have Jesse does a heck of a job at Public Works making signs. He had a family emergency and very recently returned, but he got on it immediately. He just showed us a mock-up of it today. I mean, it looks clean. It's exactly what we want, so that we won't have only the paper laminated signs. But that was a great idea to get it up immediately, but they're in the works.
They look official.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question, Tom? If we do end up changing hours, do we want to hold off on the signs for a minute just to see if we do in fact make that change, like 10 to 4? Or has this already gone forward?
I believe what other cities do, even on like their population signs, is they have like really high quality. Then they stick it on top. It's basically a high quality sticker. So yeah, I think we can move forward with making.
And
them.
then if we make it the change, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Not to
No,
throw
great
off your whole
question.
plan, but
Yeah.
okay. Thanks.
Thank you,
Yes.
Tom. Would anybody like to make a comment on the commission? Any thoughts, comments? No? Okay.
Just if we can discuss the changing of the hours to accommodate, can we do that in this meeting, or?
Yeah, if
okay.
you'd like to.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Would you like to do that now, or? We'll hear public comment, but do you want
yeah,
to?
what's the public
Okay.
comment?
Let's wait.
Okay. We're going to open it up to public comment on pickleball. As you come forward, if you don't mind stating your name for us, that would be helpful for the record. Thank
Didier
you.
Diaz. Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, it was annoying to see that people kept coming and playing, even though the new rules were clearly indicated on the doors. We heard people saying, "Oh, we didn't see them." We heard people saying, "This may have been done by somebody local. It's easy to lift the city seal from the web, etc." So that was annoying. But what was really disheartening is what we learned afterwards. Because what we learned is when we called the police, we heard that the police could not ask people to stop. All they could tell them was it was a suggestion, because it's not part of the municipal code. That's a big issue. Maybe it was not the local people, maybe the local players that came, maybe it was people who come from everywhere, but last presentation I attended, it said 1 million people come to visit Carmel Beach. I believe a subset of those will want pickleball, and whenever there is a big amount of people from the external, they will likely see the same process. So I'm very uncomfortable assuming that, oh, this will pass, as people know. So I think the locking of the net is critical, but in addition, we do need to empower the police to get play to stop on the days when it's not allowed, because you can easily get a portable net or a portable set of pickleball field lines and play, even though the nets are not available. I want to get in front of, again, feeling the same frustration from our park. We felt like, great, we're going to have some quiet days, and yes, we have had some, but between the 20th and the 29th, I believe we saw 50 people, we have people in the room who called the police many times, who came and played. It's very annoying. I would like to make a comment about something that was brought today and has been brought in before, which is this idea that we live close to a park. Administratively, yes, maybe it's one park, but when you look at what's by our house, it's a tennis court. And I believe changing the tennis court and allowing people to play a much noisier game than tennis should have been done after an impact review, which was never done. So since I will try to comply with the 3 minutes, that's all I will say at this point. Not quite. I still feel like long term, there is no place for pickleball in this school. There is no place in Carmel, not in a residential area. This may be okay for Pacific Grove, but Carmel is not Pacific Grove. I would love to get an opportunity to talk about this at more length, maybe one-on-one at some point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, Graham Norton. I live within 50 feet of the tennis courts. I'd just like to remind you of the mantra of the City Hall for the last 3.5 years. I believe it was Brown and Swanson that actually introduced it. Retaining the character of Carmel Woods. Nobody can actually put their hand up and say introducing pickleball has done that. 3.5 years almost, we've been harrying the Director of Public Works, and by his own admission, he said he'd done nothing, which I find quite appalling. In fact, actually, he did. He had a brilliant strategy where he gave all my letters of suggestions and complaints to the pickleballers. I know this to be a fact because as I walked past the tennis courts, they would shout out, "We read all your letters, Graham." Nothing to do with the residents. He did nothing. And I'm appalled by that. I appreciate he's left the building now, but by his own admission, he did tell me he'd done nothing. So, I am so pleased for this recent introduction of interest. And yes, Didier mentioned 50 people. 50 transgressions in 10 days is quite phenomenal. How can 50 people walk past that sign and say they didn't see it? So it is not going to work. They get within 30 feet of the tennis courts and all their inhibitions go. So please bear in mind that we have already suffered 3.5 years, and I am so pleased that Tom Ford had come on board. He's done a marvellous job of studying, researching, and I didn't, for those 50 transgressors, I didn't ring the police up every time. And I told them, I really feel that it isn't their job, and they have far more important things to do than go and tell pickleballers to clear off. And yes, they did actually tell the pickleballers it was an opinion, not a fact, because it didn't have a municipal code. So I'm sure that Tom's on to that now, which is good. And let's hope something transpires from this that will keep the paddle tennis people happy as well, but not in Forest Hill. Sorry, thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in chambers that would like to make a public comment? Please come forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Kratchmer. I'm a Carmel-by-the-Sea resident. I live right across the street from the courts that we're talking about. I wanted to first thank the commission and the staff for all the time and efforts you put in on this issue. On behalf of the entire neighborhood, we really appreciate it. I also want to thank you for the interim rules you put in place last month. Way better than what we've been through the last 3.5 years, and we appreciate that, and thank you for that. But it's not enough from our perspective. And I want to start out by saying, like I say every meeting, I'm not anti-pickleball. My wife and I play pickleball in our other community we have a home in, because we have indoor courts and we have courts in parks that are not in residential neighborhoods. So we've chosen not to play here for obvious reasons. It's a good game. I have nothing against the game. I have nothing against the people who play the game. They're doing nothing wrong. They're having fun. They're getting exercise, and et cetera. I'm just anti-pickleball right across the street from my house. That's a different issue. So, and that's really the core issue of what we're dealing with here. We can overanalyze this to death, but this is simply about pickleball is a good game. It's played by good people, but it should not be played in a residential neighborhood, period. That's as simple as it gets. So no one in this room or on this call would want a pickleball court across the street from their house. Not the commissioners, not the staff, not the pickleball players. I can tell you plain and simple, it's miserable. So we've been living through this 3.5 years, it's miserable. So, and you can play all you want, but if you don't live across the street from it, you don't know what it's like if you live there all day. So I'll give you Tuesday as an example. This 2 days ago was beautiful out, just like today. Absolutely gorgeous day. And I decided when I got up, I was going to go out back and stain our deck, which is a job I absolutely hate. But I thought it was a nice day, let's get it done with and do it. So I was outside for about 3 to 4 hours in the morning staining my deck, and it was a pickleball play day, and they were active. So about mid-morning, I got a text from one of my neighbors that said, "Hey, Cratch, it's another beautiful day on the peninsula, other than one thing." And he says, and it seems like they're extra loud today. Lucky us. And that's our world. And that's our world for the last 3.5 years, thanks to city leadership and not doing anything about this. I mean, we live this every day, and it's miserable. So, I mean, this is what it was like. For 3.5 hours, I was out there staying on my deck. Pop, 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 pop. Scream! Pop, 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 pop. Scream! And I'm not being critical of any of the players screaming. They're having fun. They're not doing anything wrong. But it doesn't change the fact that it just adds to the overall noise levels. And when you listen to that, every day, hour after hour after hour, and day after day after day. It's annoying as hell. I mean, nobody would want to have that. So that's the issue. It should not be played in a residential neighborhood. Put it in indoor courts, put it somewhere out in the country where there's no residences. That's, you know, what it should be about. So Carmel's widely known as a gem of a city. We're privileged to live here. We couldn't be happier to be here. So I retired at 54 8 years ago, and we bought a house here right after that, and we love this place. This is paradise. I mean, it's a gem. But we paid millions of dollars to live here, and it's a privilege. But it's being totally ruined by city leadership. City leaders have prioritized allowing pickleball to be played in a residential neighborhood. Many of the players aren't even Carmel-by-the-Sea residents, over making sure the neighbors of this park have quality of life and can enjoy this area. City leaders have prioritized playing pickleball in a residential neighborhood over making sure the city enforces the noise ordinance and other municipal codes. They've prioritized playing pickleball over making sure the city enforces the general aspects of the general and coastal use plan. And the city leaders constantly talk about how beautiful this place is and how serene it is, and the nature of the place and how peace and quiet, etc. But yet they still prioritize allowing pickleball to be played over making sure it's a serene neighborhood for everybody, not just residents who don't live by a pickleball court. That's not leadership. That's embarrassing, and that's bullshit. So, and it's not fair to the people who live by that court. So all we're asking is you become effective leaders. You stand up, you show some courage, you make the tough decision, and you take care of your tax-paying residents who live by this court. We've been living this for 3.5 years.
I think it's your time is up.
Okay,
I'm sorry to be. I'm not trying to be rude.
No, that's all right. It's fair.
We have a 3-minute limit.
What we're asking is not radical. We've looked. I mean, Dee Dee and I have researched, and we're not young. We're not good data miners, but we've come up. We've over clearly 40 cities that have already banned pickleball in residential neighborhoods. Just this morning, when I was having my coffee, I read that Nantucket is now proposing to ban pickleball on the entire island. So this is being done in lots of places. The leaders in those cities have stood up. They've taken care of their residents, and we ask you to do the same here, so we can also enjoy our neighborhood like the rest of the neighbors, and like the rest of the residents in the city.
Thank you. I really want to say something. The new mayor has made a sample of how to handle it when the red light's on. I don't know if one of you went to one of the new meetings, but he says your time is up, and we really need people to quit right when the red light comes on. So if you could think about how to say what you want to say within the 3 minutes, that would be a big help.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have anybody else in chambers that would like to make a comment? Okay, it looks like we have someone on Zoom that would like to speak.
Charles, go ahead. You just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit about the California Environmental Quality Act related to pickleball. CEQA is, I think, very applicable in this case, and you, the staff, have essentially ignored it. A discretionary decision plus the potential for adverse impacts triggers CEQA. You made several discretionary decisions on pickleball, probably, I don't know, at least going back three plus years, maybe longer. It's been documented and established that you have actual adverse noise impacts, not just the potential for that. You've made, essentially, by doing this, I think, a mockery of the decision-making process, and you violated the state's key environmental statute. I think this is a mess that needs to end. You and the staff were or are aware of the documented impacts for quite some time, and no one acknowledged the need for CEQA. I think the previous decisions you made are invalid. I recommend you drop this, or, as an alternative, prepare an environmental impact report before making any further decisions. If you decide to proceed with an EIR, you need to put a moratorium on any pickleball play given the adverse noise impacts and convert those courts back to tennis only. Just want to point out, I think there are legal implications and exposure to the city here, and you should think through your next move your next decision very carefully. And I say this in an effort as a citizen of Carmel to avoid any issues going forward, financially or otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Looks like we have one other person on Zoom that would like to speak. Zoom user, if you would kindly be open to sharing your name for the record, that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, my name's John Jarmello.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'm a neighbor of the pickleball area right there on Forest Hill Park as well. And you know, one thing to consider here is the environmental impact, right? There's PhD audiologists that have said that pickleball is so loud that players should be wearing hearing protection, and also that it's as loud as a small caliber rifle. This is way out of bounds of what should be taking place in our parks. Could you imagine if we had the local, drum team or bongo players coming, 3 days a week? It's just, just like Mr. Najarian said, this needs to end. It's noise pollution. You did the same thing for the beach when that was air pollution. So why don't you amend, I guess, make a proposal, to the city council that you would essentially amend the, the municipal code for fires on the beach and say, let's have a forest and park fun days on the beach, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, where people can light up as many bonfires as they want. Let's let's be consistent here, because what's happening in our neighborhood is noise pollution. Residents can hear in their home. That's why we're so adamant about you guys putting a stop to this now. You're misappropriating city resources to come up with some solution and accommodating persons where this is against the law. And I'm telling you right now, we're not going away, and we're going to press this issue until you do the right thing, the ethical thing by us neighbors here. So I just want you to take a long, hard consideration here of your actions, or I should say inactions, to do the right thing. I don't know how we can be more clear about this. It's just absolutely ridiculous. You're misappropriating city resources. Now it's the police department. There's no municipal code for this. The police are correct. They can go and tell people, hey, you should be playing today, but they can't cite them like someone that's lighting a beach fire. And it's because you guys are inept and you haven't thought this through, and what the consequences are for the city here. It's the truth. It's the hard truth. Make the right decision, because we're not going away, and the consequences are going to be quite substantial for the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other people that would like to make a public comment on this topic? Okay, let's bring it back to the commission. Does anybody have any additional comments that they'd like to make today regarding the pickleball update that was presented by the city?
Well, in the past, we've had citizens who wanted to play, so that's the other side of the story compared to what he just presented. But apparently, there's no one today presenting, which makes it better for you people.
And we received some correspondence. We did receive some emails from neighbors who did support pickleball on the courts.
I think we probably, thank you so much, Tom, for your report back on what's been going on the last month. I'm disappointed to hear about some people who had violated what our new rules were. This is not in our municipal code yet, as many people know. We put this into effect right before the holidays, so we didn't have an opportunity. And this is an interim rule, so we'd hope that people would be gentle persons, take it as these are our new rules, and act accordingly. So I am disappointed to hear that that wasn't always the case, and that perhaps we need to now look at taking it to the next level. We are using this time to look at other opportunities and to see, how the pickleballers are conducting themselves. I mean, I think we had made a plea to them in our last meeting that we try to be respectful of the neighbors, where you can be more quiet, use quiet equipment. Can we please do that? I don't know if that occurred. So I think now we need to maybe take it to the next level. Tom had mentioned locking up the nets that they use on the off times that they shouldn't be using them. That again takes resources. We're probably committed to a little more time to look at this. This isn't a great start. I think we do want to look at locking up nets, and on Saturday, I don't know, do we take a look at that since city staff is not here? Do we take a look at maybe not offering it on that day? I mean, these are some of the options that we need to look at this point. So
I feel like the committee took a great action in December, just a month ago, trying to implement something to alleviate the concerns that are at the park. Personally, I feel like it's a little bit early to be taking additional actions right now. I think while there were 50 transgressions cited, it sounds like over a 9-day or 10-day period. It sounds like in the past week that has not been the case, and that since the first of the year, it seems to be okay. I just think the city, before I guess, Mary, I defer to Public Works. If Public Works is prepared to take on the responsibility of locking nets, 3 times a week, twice a day during those days, if that's an easy thing and something you're recommending that the city do, then that's an easy thing to agree to. I just don't know if that's a pragmatic, realistic thing to take on right now. Like, I don't know if you need to think about, I don't know if there's things you need to explore in the next month and come back to us next month and say, hey, yes, we can do it, no problem, or whether,
I mean,
does it feel like that's something that you would like us to take action on today, right?
It is a strain on staff. We don't have a parks division, so we would be pulling resources from other duties to do that, and definitely on the weekends it would not be something that Public Works could take on, especially in this interim period. And we are understaffed as it is right now, so it definitely takes away from our resources.
Would there be the possibility in the next, I'm just curious, like in the next month, is there the possibility to explore, volunteers that might be willing to do that? I just think I'm just wondering if there's a way to have a plan that, I don't know what the solution is. Clearly the noise and interruption needs to be addressed in the neighborhood. There's no question about that, but I guess the question is today the day we should take additional action on or a revision to what was adopted last month?
Well, I think we need to be flexible as we're going through these next couple of months. We're now 1 month into what could potentially be up to a 3-month trial period. And Tom had mentioned locking nets as an option. I think stalling for another month or so isn't the answer at this point. This is a short-term thing. We're looking at just a few months. And I don't know who were the 50 or so people coming on days that they shouldn't have come, days, times.
Do we know it's 50? Like, do we have data that says it was 50 people?
I'm just using numbers that people have said. I don't, yeah.
From the residents.
I don't patrol it.
It's 51.
51.
That's quite a few.
Yeah.
And in the last, and how about in the past week?
I think it's an affront to our city. We have signs up. This is what we've got signs up. We've put these interim rules in. At this point, we can't enforce them with the law, but I think it would take less time. We wouldn't deal with calls if it's locked up, because it's just not usable. And if, I think that a person in the audience had mentioned that if somebody brought a net you can just sort of put up, that would be a time. I mean, that's thinking, if they take it to the next level. I think we should be trying to enforce this in whatever way we feasibly can. I mean, I defer to Mary and to Tom and Justin, to the team, if they don't have the time. But if they've mentioned that they can, from 10 to 4 on Tuesday and Thursday, lock and unlock, I think that's, for the next couple of months, a good option for us. And I think we look at Saturday. Do we on Saturday, do we ask for a volunteer? Do we take Saturday out of the options of days? These are things I think we can talk about and look at and see what's practical. We're only talking about doing this for another couple of months. So until we can look at and get some other information that we're currently trying to find.
Madam Chair, the only other thing that we haven't talked about, excuse me, is mitigating it with equipment changes. And that's kind of up to the pickleballers at this point. I've talked to some rabid tennis players that they've all had these issues with their tennis courts and where they're playing. But the padded, the softer paddles make a little difference. We've already heard the complaints about the balls being too soft. It's a totally different game, so the pickleballers aren't happy with that. But I'm just throwing that out there. If the pickleballers want to make less noise, they have to use different equipment. That's all.
The group that was speaking, who were the players, had said that it wasn't anywhere near as fun and it wasn't the level that, but
Right.
that doesn't mean we don't, that would be half better than not doing it at all. It would be half better for them. It's a possibility. You can easily get them on Amazon.
It was interesting, the chair of the Yountville Parks and Recs Commission, who dealt with this issue for many, many years in Yountville, I think one of their suggestions was that the quieter paddles and balls were helpful, but that really if you want to have pickleball, you need to have the acoustic fence, or you need to have some of these noise reducing, you need to have a plan to implement noise reduction through some of those fencing. They happened to visit over the holiday. They did not play pickleball at the courts, but in Yountville, the homes are actually closer to the courts than ours are. And they've had been able to very successfully bring the residents and the pickleball players together to manage the hours that pickleball's available and make it work. So I think it comes down to how do we make what we've implemented work? I don't disagree with you, Tamara, but the understanding, will there be a solution that we can implement that addresses the fundamental noise issue or not? Because that, I think, absent that, the limiting the days feels a little bit like a Band-Aid to me.
It is a Band-Aid. It's giving relief and giving us the months that we need to see if there's something else that we can do. And I feel for Tom, he's reached out to them many times. So we're at this point, we're not hearing back from them. And I think that this time was supposed to be used, to find these sorts of solutions to make it quiet so that we could carry on with having pickleball. I'm not, this last month wasn't very encouraging. And maybe it was people that were from out of town, but there's things that we can enforce and there's things that we can't. I would love it. And I think we had mentioned that in our last meeting. We said, please use this time to try to be, as respectful of the neighbors, try and use quieter equipment. We can't enforce that, though. We can't, we can only do these basic.
Yeah, personally, I would rather see the city staff focusing on how do we implement a municipal code that puts teeth into the hours on the courts than locking and unlocking nets.
Absolutely.
Personally, that would be, if I had to pick, where would I ask a resource-constrained department that's handling
Absolutely.
a lot of priorities?
Absolutely.
How do we do that? Like, I would rather see the city resource, our precious city resources figure that out first, as opposed to figuring out how do I drive and lock and unlock nets multiple times a week, personally. But I think it's
well, if they can do that, that's great. That would be great. Tom had mentioned something that we do right now. So
a critical action.
This wasn't my idea.
Yeah.
I'm going off of what some others had said. I thought it was a good interim plan to enforce it. If we can't enforce it one way, that's another way of enforcement. And you're talking about 2 days a week for the next 4 to 8 weeks. That's what we're looking at. So I'm not sure. I don't know how fast we can get the codes put into our books, and I don't know that it would stay, or this is an interim rule, so it might be gone, and it might be a very different story in 2 months from now. So
it would be nice if we could be exploring in parallel, because I have a feeling municipal code might take a little bit of time to get in place. So making sure that was in process, I think, would be the biggest surprise to me. Tom, in your report wasn't that we had some people there were transgressions over the holidays, because I think it's natural in implementing any new system that you're going to have a little bit of, it's not going to be perfect out the gate. What did surprise me was that the inability for it to be enforced, right? And for the police to show up, which is great, and sort of give a warning or tell people, hey, we're trying to reduce the time here. I think that was the unanticipated part for me, was that that the police couldn't, how do you say, have more authority to stop them from being on the court.
When the police went there and requested that, or did they in fact stop, or did they carry on?
They carried on.
Really?
And they also placed a digit in front of me.
See, this isn't right. This isn't right. I would expect, you're not surprised, I'm surprised that people saw 4 signs and didn't respect them. So I am very surprised by that. I would have paid attention to the signage.
I don't know.
You don't need any. It wasn't word of mouth. There's 4 signs. So I'm disappointed that signs weren't respected in our town, and that police, when they came out and they had suggested we can't do anything at this point, but they are asking and being ignored. I mean, this is upsetting. Mm-hmm. So I feel as though a chance was given, and now, only if our department has time can we go out there at 10 and at 4, and just, now we have to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think, do you want to make, I tell that, would you like to make a motion?
I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to amend our current interim rules to change the times on on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday to 10 to 4, and have the nets locked up on those days at 10 and at 4. Unlocked and locked. Unlocked at 10, locked at 4.
Maybe we should put, if possible, on the nets, because it says maybe we won't have anyone Saturday who would lock them up.
It might not be us, but if I'm just going to, unless we want to leave that as an open, that
Okay.
maybe there's a volunteer, or maybe, what do you think?
Okay. So the motion doesn't have you're making a motion for all days at this juncture.
I'm making a motion. I know we can't do it on Saturday, that the staff can do it, but I'm leaving it open. You had mentioned something about volunteers, so perhaps we can get volunteers in the interim,
Okay.
too.
All right, so the motion on the table is having the nets locked on Tuesday, Thursday?
Let's get Yvette to read the motion.
So amend the current rules to change times to Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from 10 to 4 and have the nets locked and unlocked on those days.
Okay, is there a second on the motion?
So we'd be shortening the time.
It's during the winter.
Which is
but-
okay, yeah.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it. We'll be revisiting this next month, but I'll second this motion.
Commissioner Burling,
Okay, yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Commissioner Jerry.
Yes.
Thank you. This motion is passed.
So a question for city staff on the locking and unlocking, just the implementation of this. Is it, Saturdays, we don't have any city staff working, so we're,
I mean, the police department works, but the public works is not working in the winter.
Not until summertime when we have more tourist seasons and more demand.
okay. So do you, just by way of advisory to the commission, is it on a best efforts basis that we'll try to do that? I just think I just want to be clear that something is passed that you just previously said was not possible. So I'd like to make sure we have clarity.
Well, Public Works can do our best effort to do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays with the reduced hours. And on Saturdays, I mean, they would be locked up on Thursday, and if there's a volunteer or something that comes up and says they'll open it and unlock it and unlock it on Saturdays. Other than that, Saturdays, it would just be remained locked Tuesday through Thursday night through Tuesday.
So does the signage need to be addressed
Who lives
then?
nearest to the courts?
Thank you, sir. Okay, I just think we should figure out on a best efforts basis. I don't know if that affects putting some paper signs up. Maybe there's someone in the pickleball club that would be willing to do the locking and unlocking on the weekend.
Yeah, we'll explore whatever we can do.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Ford may have reached out. Yes. Do you want to come up and just address that? You reached out to someone from the pickleball group, but I don't think he's had an answer. But
the one person that I asked the pointed question to regarding locking and unlocking the nets, they had indicated that they would be unfavorable to that option. I believe they're owned by a couple of people. I got the impression based on that conversation that they were purchased by, a couple of people kind of went in on it. But they indicated they would not be interested in that option or helping to lock the nets.
And also just that the city doesn't own those nets. And so I think that's also something that, we would be locking something up that the city didn't purchase or own.
Yeah,
I mean, if they want to take them on their off days, they could probably pick them up each day before 4 o'clock and take them if they wanted. I don't know that giving them the keys won't necessarily be the best solution.
I'm not sure about that. I have a different point of view about the implementation. I think if you check any municipal pool, I think if you go and look at, it likely was out-of-town people. We get a lot of people here that come into our cities at different times. They spend a lot of money to come here, and they probably just brush right past a sign.
I'm sure. I'm not saying that.
I'm not saying it's right or that they should be doing it or that it's okay. But I think just if you have 50 in the last 2 weeks of December and 0 in the past 2 weeks, right? There's definitely an improvement week over
Right.
week.
I just don't think that we should be giving them the keys that belong to our public works locks and letting them, and then we need to get them back from them. And I just don't know that that's a good solution.
Yeah, I don't think the courts are being locked, right? You're just going to like bicycle lock,
No,
padlock.
just lock the, yeah. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that we should be giving them keys to the bicycle locks or whatever locks that we're using. I just don't know that that's a good idea. Why don't we give it to a neighbor then?
Why?
Maybe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
You know, yeah, exactly. I don't think that's the solution, personally. I think it needs to be a neutral party who holds the keys.
Maybe we can only lock them up on Tuesday and Thursday then, when the city people would be available at 10 to 4 perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd be locked for some Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is when a lot of people, is Saturday a lot busier on the course?
Yes, Saturday is the weekend is the busiest 2 days or was.
So then we'd have cut off the weekend that way,
Mm-hmm.
which is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There remains an enforcement question, right, even on the motion that just passed. I guess I think we should just acknowledge that. And
Can the police do this? I mean, I don't know. Is it something, they've been coming out to, we're talking about maybe 4 to 8 times in the next month or two. I don't even know if it's something that they would want to do or be able to do. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw another neutral party into it if it's.
My gut feeling is no.
Yeah.
I can always ask the police chief, but I would go with the assumption of no. They wouldn't take on that responsibility.
Okay.
But,
maybe you could let us know. Might cut down on them being called. I don't know. I know.
okay, are we good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move on to our next item of business, which is the artificial turf policy. And I think this was going to be a presentation by the, regarding the artificial turf. Thank you. Yep.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Wallace, and I'm one of the planners. I'm so pleased to join you today to talk about artificial turf. One moment while it gets moved over to the screen. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let me just hit the lights real quick. So to start with some background, in 2016, as an emergency measure in a time of drought, the state of California enacted a new code requiring jurisdictions to approve drought-tolerant landscaping, and this included synthetic grass and artificial turf on residential property. So accordingly, the City of Carmel has been approving applications that meet certain permitting standards. So just last year, Senate Bill 676 amended that 2016 government code and restored the power of jurisdictions to either limit, further regulate, or even prohibit the installation of synthetic grass. So this year, in response to that revised bill, we have prepared an artificial turf policy that prohibits the installation of artificial turf citywide. And this new policy would replace the old permitting standards. So to start with, what is artificial turf? It's a man-made synthetic product that is intended to simulate the appearance of natural turf, grass, sod, or lawn. And I'll just go back through in more detail the background and what we're proposing and why. So to revisit, in 2016, the state said, a city shall not enact any ordinance that prohibits the installation of drought-tolerant landscaping, synthetic grass, or artificial turf. It also said that cities could impose reasonable restrictions on synthetic turf, excuse me, as long as they do not do any of the following. 1, substantially increase the cost of installing the turf. 2, effectively prohibit the installation of the turf. Or 3, significantly impede the installation of turf. We couldn't require that a yard must be fully living plant material. Basically, we had to be approving turf. And then the last part of that 2016 law said that we could impose, one of the reasonable restrictions was that we could say no turf within the drip line of a tree. So to comply with that state law, back in 2017, we did develop permitting standards. Those are an attachment to your staff report. And city records indicate that we've approved approximately 40 applications for artificial turf since 2017. It's possible that more has been installed. These are the permitting standards that we had been using. There was no fee. You did have to submit a design study though. And with that design study, we required a site plan. We wanted to see the square footage of the turf, where it would be installed. The site plan needed to show the location of existing trees. And then applicants also needed to come in with a physical sample of the product that they were proposing. And city staff would ensure that the turf would not be installed within 6 feet of trees to adequately protect tree roots, to ensure that water was percolating down near the trees. And then we also, we checked the synthetic turf product to make sure that it looked like grass and not just a putt-putt golf lawn. And we also made sure that there were holes in the turf product to percolate that water through. So just last year, there was a state reversal. Governor Newsom signed Senate Bill 676, like I said, restoring our authority to prohibit turf. This is the code language. So it really kind of revised the definition of drought-tolerant landscaping to exclude synthetic grass, or artificial turf. So now, in response to the amended state law, we're preparing an artificial turf policy, also an attachment to your staff report, prohibiting the installation of artificial turf citywide, primarily because it's a plastic petroleum product, and it may cause adverse effects on public health, stormwater management, pollutant discharge, and neighborhood character. So we do find that it's inappropriate in all zoning districts. I'm going to go through each of those reasons quickly. The first being public health. There are studies that illuminate the potential health impacts from exposure to these chemical compounds. There are carcinogens, neurotoxicants, mutagens, endocrine disruptors, BPAs, PFAS, a whole mix of things that we don't really want to be getting into our air, water, and soil in our bodies. and Carmel residents might be vulnerable to exposure risks. And these are really just, coming out in more recent years as studies are being done and we learn more about this product. Secondly, when we look at stormwater management, as I said, we have been looking at the samples and making sure there's holes in them to ensure water percolation through the product. However, the absorption rate of a synthetic turf product is just not comparable to a natural plant material. And as we all know, we have very small lot sizes, and that just amplifies the importance of on-site water percolation, limiting runoff impacts to both neighboring properties and our city storm drains. Which brings us to pollutant discharge. Synthetic turf products have micro and nanoplastics, nylon, and what they call crumb rubber pictured there. That's just a handful of things in this product. And those materials deteriorate over time and they leach into the air, water, and soil. As you know, Carmel Bay is a protected watershed and an area of special biological significance. Our storm drains flow directly into the ocean without treatment, and therefore we have very significant stormwater management responsibilities. We want to control what's going into our ocean. Landfill material. So artificial turf products, they don't last forever. They have to be periodically removed and replaced. And because it's a complex product with layers of various petroleum and plastic, when the turf needs to be replaced, it's not recycled, it's just landfilled. And then that brings us lastly to neighborhood character. So in addition to the environmental concerns that we're all just learning about, city staff, we've identified negative aesthetic impacts to the city. So our municipal code prohibits unnatural landscape designs, and we also have our residential design guidelines, which are more recommendations that the staff follows, and while our planning commission can deviate from them, city staff cannot. So the residential design guidelines encourage natural settings, natural forest character, natural materials. You'll find the word natural all through these documents. And while there certainly is a range of turf product quality available on the market, you can see like the image on the top is much taller, fuller, looks a little bit more like real grass than the image on the bottom, putt-putt golf. Even the most natural looking, high quality, expensive products, they still appear synthetic. So as I said, our design guidelines really speak a lot about natural materials and also about lawns generally. So front yards should be informal gardens rather than the traditional grass lawns seen in many other communities. So this isn't just artificial turf, this is just real turf even. As I said, it's pretty explicit. Avoid synthetic materials, and then Design Guideline 10.3 speaks to like what's visible from the street is very important. We're looking for informal plant arrangements, and lawns visible from the street are just inappropriate to the forest setting and should be avoided. So interestingly, we're not the first to consider doing this. Turf has already been prohibited in Millbrae and in San Marino. And it looks like other jurisdictions are following. That wraps up kind of my summary of the history and what we're proposing now when it comes to California Environmental Quality Act environmental review. That's not applicable today because you as a commission are simply being asked to consider making a recommendation to the City Council regarding a formal adoption of an artificial turf policy or prohibition. And that action, the recommendation, will not result in a direct or indirect physical change in the environment. You're not approving this policy today. Therefore, the action does not qualify as a project and is not subject to environmental review, and it's ultimately the City Council that would make a CEQA determination. So in conclusion, the staff recommendation is please consider the draft policy and make a recommendation to the council. And as I said, because artificial turf is a plastic petroleum product that may cause adverse effects on public health, stormwater management, pollutant discharge, and neighborhood character, staff does find that artificial turf, synthetic grass, is inappropriate citywide. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
It seems to me that this is a little ahead of time, since the landscaping design and so on is still being worked, both from the tree aspect and from the city is still working. I think Brandon is, since he has 2 jobs, the design review hasn't gone too far.
You're correct.
So
those efforts have taken a while.
Some of it in this, I think, would be changed somewhat. Not so much what the bad issues of the artificial turf are, but in terms of, like, saying no lawns and that there should be not be flowers and stuff. I think we've gotten a little past that, and hopefully it's more general. And I have to laugh when you say no lawns to be seen by the street, because of course, what are people supposed to pull out their lawns that can be seen by the street? To me, this is pretty rigid, and I would really want to go word by word on it if we ever had to say anything more about it.
Okay, it's just a draft policy, and we couldn't go through it word by word. Right now, the staff is not recommending that folks are required to pull out their existing turf products. In other jurisdictions, they are saying that over, within 10 years, say, all the artificial turf has to be gone, and we are not suggesting that. It simply would apply to future installation of new turf. And you're correct. We're working on updating the design guidelines. We're not quite there yet, but we do want to stop approving turf today.
You do want to what?
Just turf. All their, she gave us the...
Let her tell me. What were you saying?
We are hoping to stop approving artificial turf products prior to the hopefully soon adoption of updated design guidelines that might have different language about lawns generally, natural lawns, but this is really specific to artificial turf. And I did just include the language about lawns because it's what we are working with today, at least.
One consideration, of course, is water, and artificial lawns do save water.
Absolutely, and I think that was the main reason that the state did this in 2016. Of course, it's a drought concern, and now we're just learning more about potential bigger concerns than that.
And so far this year, we've had 2.5 inches of rain, so it fits in there. But that's all I have to say.
But just to be clear, all you're recommending is that City Council consider immediate adoption of a no artificial turf policy, grandfathering everybody that has artificial turf on their current property.
That's right.
Right, so people who have turf today, no action. Mm-hmm. It's just stopping more
That
turf.
would be the staff recommendation. That's correct. The council could add language to the policy saying that they'd like to see all existing turf be taken out within a certain time period, but at that time we haven't included that language.
And I just have a question out of curiosity, like the idea to stop artificial turf in the city. To me, that seems like that's part of a planning would be dealing with that more than us, because planning is the one that receives any kind of remodel, yard redo. The planning commission receives all of those, right? Mm-hmm. We never see it unless there's an issue with a tree. That's the only time it comes here. So I'm just curious, why it's here as opposed to planning.
Yeah. Well, I'm a planner, and planning drafted the policy, and planning will then take it to the planning commission after this meeting, and then take it to the city council. And we wanted to come to you as an advisory body to the city council.
Okay.
And of course, get the word out early on that we're going through this process, and invite any community feedback. And as the Forest Commission, this affects the forest. And we do have our forester review landscape plans, which sometimes include artificial turf or grass.
Okay, so it's just just get it more as a courtesy and for people to be exposed, right? Is that okay? Right.
I think the artificial turf is one position. I mean, that whatever goes into that is the health and all sorts of things. The other part, there's too much in this that really deals with landscaping. I think that this should be a separate sort of thing.
Thank you for your feedback. We can look into focusing in on the potential health impacts and impacts to the environment, and with the knowledge that the design guideline language might be changing, we can be more general on that front and maybe not include so many quotations from our existing documents.
Thank you so much for presenting this. I do recall some years ago, excuse me, there were a lot of students, high school athletes that were coming down with various cancers that they've attributed it to the artificial turf. I don't know if you recall that from some years ago. There was a lot of, I think it was in Texas, and so it's a serious thing. When I read this, what had concerned me is things like runoff off of the turf, since it doesn't absorb and it's getting into our other plants, and so there's a bigger effect from this. I think that it's pretty clear that this isn't safe. And I agree with Sarah. There's probably parts of this that we would look at, and there's parts that another commission might be looking at. But I certainly see the danger in this, and I'm comfortable. I know we're going to move through this. I'm comfortable with not using it from this point on. That's just me. The rest of the commission can, but I see that as an important thing to take into the future. So I want to thank you.
I completely agree also. And I think Commissioner Mischke and I also have children that were in the era of when they started discovering that what they'd put in wasn't so good after all. But I think you did a really nice job with your presentation.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you taking the initiative to raise this as part of, if you're under a design review, et cetera. I think if we just think about our city, I think I would certainly support grandfathering anybody that had been using these materials. I don't think to me it escalates to a level of having anybody change something they already have in place. But I think going forward, it makes good environmental sense.
Thank you.
You know that we're working on some new forestry guidelines, and so some of what you say here wouldn't necessarily go with what we're saying. That's why I'm suggesting it be separated out.
Speaking just to the matter of the turf, right? I think that's
So Commissioner Burling, just so I understand, I'm very familiar with the urban forest master plan that's in progress, but I didn't know that there might be some contradictory language about lawns or turf from what we've started with here in the policy. There may be, or okay. I can work with Justin.
You were referring to the comments about like the flowers and things, right?
Yeah,
she was referring more to the context.
Where you talk about this is a forestry town, that's a fairly new idea from what
we'll be sure to strip anything that doesn't deal explicitly with artificial turf.
Jerry, did you have it?
I think we should move that we recommend to the city council that they discontinue allowing artificial turf.
We don't have to take an action, I don't think, do we?
Well, we can make a recommendation. It's not an action at this point, and they're working on the draft. but we can recommend that they consider removing from this day forward artificial turf in guidelines with this new state law changes.
We'll have, let's have our public comment, and then we
Yes.
can take our motion.
Yes.
That would be great. Thank you. Do we have anybody that would like to make a public comment? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Melanie, I thought this might be the one time that, that we.
No, don't hold your breath. I think Catherine's done an
Just watch your
outstanding
light.
job.
Okay.
An outstanding job on this. And I totally agree with her recommendation and also your comments, Jerry. And sitting on the Design Traditions Committee for these number of years, and the previous one, I'll just tell you, why don't we just deal with what Catherine is proposing and resolve this issue, because it's a definite issue of health, safety, and welfare. And leave all of the other extraneous comments to be dealt with when Design Traditions, resolves these issues, and when a final product comes, which you will be asked about for your comments. I just think it's, we've spent a lot of time today on issues that are not as important as this one. I mean, think about your dogs. Those of you who have artificial turf, or the people in the community who have dogs, who have children, who have grandchildren who come and play on artificial turf. I mean, it's not appropriate for a community like this, and never has been. And the state now is just wising up to a very bad decision they made about supporting artificial turf in all of these public uses. And before they had the scientific information to make a wise decision. Now you have that information. So I hope that you all will vote wisely and not worry about flowers, but worry about health, safety, and welfare, which is what Catherine's bringing to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie.
And please note the time.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in chambers that would like to make a comment? No, but I see hands raised. Yvette, online.
Ramey, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Catherine, for a very, very good presentation. Brought up all the health concerns. Thank you, Melanie, for your comments. One thing that was not brought up, and I do not want the commission, the Forest and Beach Commission, to lose sight of this issue. I do want them to carry the flag on it, because this has everything to do with tree health. I'm a landscaped contractor. I've been a contractor for 20 years. I moved up here from Southern California when the big artificial turf movement occurred, and I know how to install artificial turf. I'm not happy that I know how to install it, but I know how to install it. And what happens to the earth underneath the artificial turf is basically concrete. If artificial turf is installed correctly, it has runoff, because liquids like urine and rain don't percolate through it, despite the fact that people say it's important to have holes in the turf and to see that water goes through it. Yeah, it might go through the plastic, petroleum distillate material and the grassy looking stuff, but it doesn't go far beyond the concrete that's underneath it. And when I say concrete, it is a crushed, decomposed, oftentimes reclaimed asphalt material that gets compacted to 4 inches. There's nothing going through it. So it has everything to do with tree health. It should not be put anywhere near a drip line of our beautiful trees here. And I would ask that the Forest and Beach Commission take very, very serious attention and don't pass the buck on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramey.
Cindy, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Forest and Beach Commissioners, city staff, and particularly Catherine Wallace for her excellent presentation, beautifully researched and presented. I also would like to cite Commissioner Montmorency's comments, which I thought were very good, and Ramey Allard's, which kind of rounded out in terms of understanding the installation process. On top of that, I recall when this was rather new and some neighbors put some in so that their dog had a place to go. And they found out that on a sunny day, their dog wouldn't go on it because it was too hot. And then they found that they had to wash their artificial turf periodically because the urine didn't percolate through. I also learned that when the Carmel High School put it in on the field, that particularly in football, in a tackle situation, the athletes were getting like a road rash or a burn from sliding on the artificial turf. That didn't have a whole lot to do with, public health and safety, but it was just anecdotal remarks about the things that had not been known about artificial turf at the time it was put in. But it obviously, the research now is shown that it is really very adverse, and I would encourage you to pass this on, and you're not adopting anything, but you are sending a recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. It looks like we're complete with our public comment. I'll bring it back to our group. Jerry, would you like to? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there one more hand raised? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Linda, go ahead.
Yes, Linda Smith here. I just want to support and amplify Melanie's, Ramey's, and Cindy's comments. Artificial turf is really inappropriate for Carmel of all towns. So lots of dangers have been revealed, and I agree with them all. Forest, it is appropriate, I believe, for Forest and Beach to take a stand because we are, Forest and Beach does have as its purview the forest and the health of the forest. That means the health of the soils, the roots, the mycorrhizae, because no mycorrhizae can grow underneath an artificial turf. So the soil basically dies underneath it. So I think all of these ladies have said something very important, and I approve and agree with them wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, now I think we can bring it back. Jerry, would you like to restate your motion?
I move that we recommend to the City Council that they consider stopping the approval of any artificial turf in the city of Carmel.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Yvette.
Commissioner Burling?
I abstain.
Commissioner Brzezowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey?
Yes.
Commissioner Jerry?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is passed. It's not a motion. It's a recommendation. The recommendation has passed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our next order of business is the revised community engagement survey for the Carmel Coastal Engineering and Adaptation Phase 2, Task 1.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine,
Thank
for
you.
presenting. I'm obviously in favor of banning artificial turf.
They're presenting the an updated, a revised survey. It was, yeah.
Let's see that on the schedule.
All right. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and Commissioners. My name is Val Gano, environmental analyst with the city, and today I am presenting the revised version of the community engagement survey that was presented at the November 14th Forest and Beach Commission meeting. The community engagement survey, which I may also refer to as community survey or survey, is part of Task 1, Phase 2 of the Coastal Engineering and Adaptation Planning Study. So for members of the public interested in learning more, if you are just tuning in, you can see the results of Phase 1 on the city website under Environmental Programs. So Task 1 of Phase 2 is public outreach and community engagement. Task 2 is an adaptation pathway development, of which the main deliverable will be the adaptation strategy matrix. Task 3 is the hazard policy review of the local coastal program, or LCP, and Task 4 will be recommendations for amendments to the local coastal program. Okay, Task 1, public outreach and community engagement, includes two parts. This first one is a community survey, and the second part are community meetings. During the first half of 2025, several community and public meetings will be held. The intent is to both educate the community, on sea level rise predictions, coastal erosion concerns, and the adaptation strategy options that we will be presented. That's coming up in February or March, a presentation by the consultants from Integral on the adaptation strategy matrix. But today we have a simpler task. It's to review the survey revisions and make suggestions or approval for that content, for any additional suggestions for marketing that we do not have listed on this presentation, and for the timing of the survey launch. So I know the commissioners are aware of the survey goals, but I thought for the benefit of the public, I would just review those briefly. The survey assesses the demographics of both local, regional, national, international Carmel beachgoers, including where they travel from, how often they visit the beach, and what areas of the beach they frequent. And the city will have this data and be able to use it for other means besides the sea level rise study. It collects data on the values and use priorities of the beachgoers, including what activities they prefer and the frequency of their activities. It intends to foster meaningful engagement with both the residents, the visitors, the workforce, community members from surrounding areas in Monterey County and the Bay Area, beach visitors from disadvantaged areas, and I think this is important to mention, disadvantaged demographics such as those requiring ADA accessibility. The heart of the survey is collecting data on the participants' understanding, experiences, and values associated with both short-term and long-term beach sand erosion, sea level rise concerns, and the available strategies we have. The way that this new revised version of the survey is structured, we'll be able to use it as a teaching tool during community meetings, and I can explain that further later in the presentation. The results will be used can be and will be used to solicit additional funding for research and implementation. And lastly, it is a requirement of our $500,000 California Coastal Commission grant. Survey methods. So Qualtrics is a professional and intuitive software, and it will allow staff and consultants to easily graph and visually communicate the results. The survey can be open and accessible online as long as the commission decides. The consultants originally suggested opening it from January through July to access beach visitors through different seasons. But I'll mention some other options at the end of the presentation. The survey is available via web link, a QR code, and on paper at Public Works by request. It will be a different version than you all have in front of you. It'll be much easier to read and understand. And lastly, the survey will be distributed through a variety of methods listed, and I'll also bring them up at the end of the presentation. So on to the revisions. I think everyone has a copy. We did work with Commissioner Brzezowski yesterday she had some really great additional red line edits. So I think everyone has a copy, and I have a copy here if anybody in the public wants. First off, the survey was shortened. So according to a study by Cost and Rosa from 2018, shorter surveys under 7 minutes elicit a higher response rate than longer surveys. The survey was cut to about 6 minutes. It takes me about 4 minutes, but I have done it about 20 times at this point, so I'm getting good at it. The introductory language was simplified, and then you can also see in the red line edits simplified to a higher extent, just to make it more accessible to a variety of readers. A point brought up in the last meeting was the map boundaries. So the consultants extended the map to include, I think somewhere in the app, the north end of the beach was missing, so that should be included now as well. And I will mention briefly, we talked about question 9 yesterday. This obviously isn't on the online version, but where question 9 asks where you most frequently spend time at the beach, Chair had a great idea of breaking the map into 4 pieces and then asking people on a level of frequency scale of how often they spend time at that particular spot on the beach. So getting to more of the heart and the complex part of the survey. At the November 14th meeting, the commissioners discussed the complexity of the draft survey language and suggested that many questions should be reworded to be more accessible to people with a wide variety of experiences and backgrounds, and especially with different understanding or low understanding of the terminology related to these strategies. So in the revised version of the survey, we removed 3 of the more technical questions that were originally assessing the preferences of different adaptation strategies. We reworked the wording and then also used a scaffolding option that the survey software provides so that the technical questions only appear when someone has answered that they already have a significant understanding of that strategy. And I'll explain more in a moment. It begins with question 11, which now has images added to better clarify the strategies. And where this question used to, right off the bat, assess someone's support of that strategy, it now only assesses their experience and their knowledge level. So incorporating these scaffolded or hidden questions serves 2 purposes. One, it does not confuse the participant or solicit an unexperienced answer. And then 2, it will help us use it as a teaching tool during the community meetings that I'll explain in a moment. So question 11 is now the indicator question. If the participant answers either not at all familiar or know a little, have some experience, they will not see questions 12 and 13 appear. If they answer that they have the highest level option, which is moderate to detailed knowledge or prior experience to one or more of the strategies, then the hidden questions appear. Only the strategies that someone has chosen that they have moderate or detailed knowledge of will appear then in question 12. And then they are asked to rate their support in question 12. New question 13 assesses the level of urgency a participant feels about addressing sea level rise and coastal storms. And you can see in the red line edits, we've changed the language just a little bit to make it, more effective at data collection. And in question 14, so if you did not have much knowledge or little to no experience, you skip right to question 14. Those questions for the most part have not changed. They are demographic. We added an option for living in Carmel area, unincorporated in Monterey County. And then lastly, the chair had a great idea of adding an additional question, and this is easy for us to have the consultants do, asking where the survey participant found the study, what location, whether it was at the library or at the beach or, on social media. So lastly, teaching tool. What we'll be able to do during the community meetings with the consultants is explain in more detail all the strategies listed in question 11. And then once the participants of those meetings feel like they have a better understanding of the pros and cons of each strategy, then they can go ahead and open up questions 12 and 13 and give us their opinions. So staff recommendations. We recommend to approve the survey as is or with minor specific changes. We're asking for the commissioners to decide on a launch date and a closing date. Originally was the consultants' recommendation of January through July, but with marketing pushes at different times. Also, we've discussed opening for smaller segments of time. And there's a list there in the slides of places we can market the survey. If anyone else has a recommendation, we can add that to our list. And thank you for listening to the presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. You can stay. No, you should stay because I'm sure. One thought I had yesterday evening was the Carmel. Who does the Carmel marketing? Carmel. Visit Carmel. Sorry. Thank you, Justin. The Visit Carmel. It would be great if in their Facebook, their social media posts, that they could put this up. I think one of the things that struck me the last time you presented this, and the goal is really to make sure that you get a broad swath of input on it's the public access to the beach. Unlike, this isn't just like Carmel residents input. So I think given that, we talked about like laminating, having QR code access, like posted at the beach. Yeah. I think having, and I think as we spoke yesterday, I'd be in favor of like 3 30-day window openings. I just think when you leave a link open for 90 days in this current environment, you just really risk all kinds of problems with having poor quality data. Okay. People hack those links, you get bought. I mean, there's just, it's the era that we live in right now, and having concentrated periods where you're focusing people. And I think we talked a little bit about maybe the benefits of one in the winter, one in the spring, one in the summer, like trying to get different times of year. Initially we had talked about if we're just going for volume, maybe we wait till the spring or summer, but then Val raised a really excellent point that getting feedback from people about the winter beach is also really helpful and useful. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
So how fast can you get this up once we've approved it? And
when we ask them to make changes, it's usually within a couple days that they're able to do it.
So pretty quick.
Yeah.
So if you want winter, we need to probably get on that pretty quick. Okay. And then one in the spring. Are you looking for more active times? Like, would you be looking for, say, April, spring break time period when we get a lot of people here? Are you trying to look for more of a normal? Yeah. What's your?
Well, without putting too much thought into it, I think it would be nice to have winter data. We haven't had a storm in a bit, but I assume, we may. And then we get different scouring and beach events, so it's good to get people's opinion during that time. Earth and Arbor Day in April is a big event, and that's a big opportunity. There's also the marathon, and there's other events that go on. So we could do,
when we get we
could do it February and April, and then maybe a longer period in the summer. I mean, it's up to the commission.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, what you decide.
Okay, thank you. Okay. That's good.
I think one thing you could consider also is the survey results are coming in, you could have them tracking you know, the question where you're a visitor or a resident, or, you know, there's a, like, by type, and also by frequency of visitation, right? So if you're trying to get a lot of input from a broad swath, you want to make sure that you have visitors who are, like, more frequent, like one time ever in my life, versus people who've, you know, I come every year. I think the frequency question we might want to look at one more time, just to see how often do you visit the beach would be interesting. And it's something we could take off, like how many years have you been visiting the Carmel Beach or something like that, right? But my point is, you can monitor those demographics as they're coming in, and just see, for example, if you find like you're not getting as many visitors who are, like, if the QR codes aren't working at the farmer's market, then make sure you've got more down at the beach access points. Does that make sense? You can that's something that you can look at in real time without impacting the results. You can look at just those demographics to see if there's populations you'd like to try and get more of.
I think that's a good point, and although like I don't have direct access to the Qualtrics, I have used it before and understand how you can sort of assess those different.
It's easy.
So I'm glad that you brought it up to make the point, so we can communicate with the consultants that we check in on a regular basis about the results and whether or not our marketing strategies are really reaching who we want them to reach.
I think what you're trying to get good quality responses across a broad swath of people. It's a little bit different in terms of like, it's not like a point in time survey. It's a little bit different in terms of the results that you're looking for. Yeah, and maybe just to how long. That question one is really, that you do have a good question on the frequency, but maybe like for how many years? Just some kind of sense of, is it someone that's a...
Are you suggesting that we put that into question 2?
Yeah, is a follow-on within that, or a separate question?
Well, I mean, I could ask them to do a scaffolded question right there, where, for example, you have question 2 and it's asking how many times a year, and like if we want to know, were you asking for, let's say, people
and then
who,
how many years have you had that? Do you see what I'm saying? So it's sort of like you get a calibration of how frequently they are now, and whether that's a single point in time or it's and that scaffolding, I think I would make really broad, right? Like
like add 2 times a year or 3 times. Wait, no. Sorry,
it would be a follow-up question to this. So whatever they put here, you would just say, and
for how many
years do you have experience visiting the Carmel Beach? And you might want to just say less than 1 year, 1 to 5 years, more than 5 years, or something like that. Keep it really simple.
Okay, we could do 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 plus.
I would say more than 5 years is just
more than 5.
That's good enough.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's an easy thing I can explain to them to add. Do you suggest that whatever they reply to in question 2, that it opens up that second question? Or do we only choose the people who have indicated that they go more often to the beach?
I think I would ask it of everybody.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay.
Because you may have people that come once a year, but I've come for more than 5 years.
Yeah, I've come 2 times a year for more than 5 years, or 3 to 5 times a year for, I think it applies for all of them too.
I think that gives you, when you, in the end of all this, when you have all the data, it just gives you a really nice way to look at people who have visited over many, many years, and then broken out by frequency, right?
You're right, because it makes a big difference to say I come once a year, then I come once a year
more
for
than 5
20
years.
for my entire life.
It allows
someone who has a lot of historical information versus somebody who's just been coming the last year.
Yeah,
you know, it's good to know.
Okay, that's a great point.
And do you already have your dates picked out for your presentations in February and March? Are you starting to?
We don't yet, and maybe, Mary, do you mind speaking to this part of how the planners have talked about rolling out some of these meetings?
Sure. We don't have dates picked, but we have just discussed having potentially joint meetings with the Climate Committee and or the Planning Commission along with the Forest and Beach Commission, so that there's a kind of depending upon the first meeting and how well attended that goes, and then adding additional meetings.
It might not be a separate community meeting, but just part of another meeting that's going on with planning or.
Yeah, we definitely haven't figured out the logistics of it yet.
Okay.
And I think after talking to planning, they're interested in hosting broader community meetings. And there's only been like rough outlines of that so far, but I'm happy to come back with more specifics next month.
Okay.
That's kind of that'll be a harder thing to accomplish.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to get like Carmel visitors to come to a community meeting.
Yeah.
It may involve more locals, those meetings. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see what the feedback is, particularly of like when you look at the visitor population.
Yeah, I think it's likely that we'll have people who have experience with different sea level rise or coastal erosion strategies from different parts of the world. And there is an option for a bit of a 4-sentence paragraph that anyone who's taking the survey can write in and give some more specifics.
Okay. Thank you. Nice. Okay. Do we have anybody that would like to make a public comment on this part of the grant in the survey? No. Okay. Moving on to our, would you like to make a public comment? Yes. Okay. Come on up.
The survey looks pretty good, but what I'd like to ask you guys, because you've been working on this much longer, is can you give me a context for what all of this is? I mean, are we talking about this being part of a survey to understand about perhaps future revetments or changes to the coast regarding wave action, wave and storm action? Is that what this is really all about? That's what I'm guessing. I've done some reading, but it's not my forte. So I'm trying to get where we are as a community and where you guys are with all of this. I mean, the survey seems reasonable, but why are we going internationally? Why aren't we just concerned with, people in the United States, or just take, our communities who really use the beach, which is our county and Northern California and, the San Joaquin Valley. What is all of this about? Why?
I think it'll be just people who use our beach will participate. I think the language option is just to allow people to select a different language if that's easier for them. Correct, Val? I'm sorry, the language,
The international component is just that we have international visitors and we're surveying the people that visit the beach. And we're allowing them to give comment in the chans that they perhaps have experience in wherever they live. But the majority of the work will be soliciting information and teaching about these strategies to people on a more local level.
Maybe to the first part of your question, though, this is part, as I understand it, Mary, why don't you take this one?
I was going to wait
Yeah.
until all the public comments were given, and then we can provide a response if you would like, or it's your option if you want us to respond.
I think go ahead. That's a good question. How does this fit in the context of that grant?
Yes, so we've been doing we call it a coastal engineering study, and it's, I think Val alluded to that it's on the city's website, and we we were looking at impacts to the beach and forecasted impacts to what's going to happen in the future. And so this is a study so that we can assess how the community would also, if people have ideas about the seawalls and importing sand if necessary, or just how people want to deal with sea level rise for the future, because we're going to be adopting an amendment to our local coastal plan, and in doing so, we have to figure out how we're going to deal with sea level rise.
How are you going to educate people? And we're asking them on a survey, which is a pretty good survey, but I haven't followed what all you've been doing, which has been substantial. But I do know something about the California coast, its geology and its geography. And if any of you have read what's going on up and down the California coast, just even in the last 10 years, not to talk about going back thousands of years, how are you going to get adequate information from people who do not study this, who have no scientific knowledge on which to base what they're going to give you as direction for coming up with multi-million-dollar, supposed solutions to a coast that is, very difficult for anyone to manage. So, I mean, that's, I'd appreciate knowing a little bit more, Mary, about this, because I think it's really critical for the community. And if I don't get it, I don't, there are a lot of people who this would come as a shock, like, what are we doing? I mean, they hear about that certain actions are being taken by the state and yada yada in the news, but they don't really understand, they don't have the background to make, for all of us in this community to be making decisions on major engineering and major financial decisions. So that's the reason I'm asking you the questions, is because I'm just kind of curious that I don't, I haven't heard that much about it until I got this, this packet, but I really appreciate it.
My understanding is, so to be clear, in the last time it came to the commission, what you're asking about is exactly what was discussed. So
I wasn't here.
The purpose of the survey isn't to solicit inputs on what to do to the beach based on the people who attend there, but rather to just for people to kind of report how they use the beach today, what parts of the beach they use, and are they aware or familiar with any of these ways that like a beach can be maintained. Does that make sense? And I think as part of the grant, as I understand it, the grant required the city to run the consultants to run a survey to just understand how people generally use the beach today. I think if you'd seen the first version versus this version, you'll see there's a big change in how what people are being asked, and I think the idea was just to understand how and where people
it's being utilized
today, but not for them to tell, not for people to say how to do these repairs. But I think, Val, this is Melanie's raising an interesting point. It might be good at the very end of the survey, after someone has hit the submit button, to flash up a paragraph that says this is part of a California Coastal Commission project. It's a grant that the city of Carmel is, this is one action of that grant or something, because otherwise I can imagine our phone's going to be ringing off the hook by people in town, residents, saying, what the heck, right? Like, what are you guys doing? So maybe just having a placard, right?
I think some kind of introduction would be better.
I think to be clear up front with why we're doing this too would be useful, because if you're, you're a representation of who would be seeing this, and you're probably clearer than most on what we're doing here. So just to put it out there, and then at the end, just reinforce it.
Maybe just in the beginning, so you can bias a
an
survey
intro.
a lot if you put a lot of that at the beginning. That's
Right.
why there's, I think just putting that it's part of a grant or something in the beginning and put all the information at the end.
Well, I think even more, if I can, Kelly, in the beginning as an introduction, saying that this particular survey is part of a project, that's related to the Coastal Commission's desire for information about yada, yada, yada. And, and we really appreciate your helping us out with this or something like that. And then at the end, if you wanted to do a little bit more reinforcement, you could make a couple of sentences or so. Because, it's something I've been wondering about, because I hear little bits and bobs, but I wasn't at that last meeting. Unfortunately, I was out of the country. Enjoying the Mexican Riviera and coastline and all what they're doing down there. And so I just appreciate, your cooperation on this, and also letting me ask you questions about this, because like I said, I'm not real schooled in what you're doing, and if I'm not, I can imagine that there are a few people in town that also are of that ilk. So thank you so much.
I think that, it's something at a little bit at the beginning, but a paragraph or something at the end would be good. Okay. I can if you want to volunteer, I'm happy to connect with you separately.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. And I don't know if she wants to hear what the introduction is, right?
Yeah, can we hear?
As is with the edits. The objective of this survey is to help the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea better understand how you use Carmel Beach. Your inputs will also help the city develop ways to respond to storms and future sea level rise.
Right. I think maybe just putting in here that this is part of a grant on a broader project would be.
Okay.
Maybe we don't need to do it right this second, but.
Okay, and then something similar at the end?
I think the end I would put more specific, like this is the, whatever your title is, and I'd put a little bit more
The Coastal Adaptation Project and Sea Level Rise.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more public comment. Shirley?
Shirley, go ahead.
Hi. As confused as I can be about this, I'm kind of on the same page as Melanie, not understanding. I mean, I do understand this is part of a requirement for a grant, but what is the ultimate purpose of this grant? Because even though I'm reading on our website, I see that the objective has been expanded and it's more clear the way it was just read. But so much of this information is already known, and I really don't understand how having better surfing is somehow connected to what we do with the seawalls and the revetments and so forth. So it seems very confusing to me, and I would like to see some leverage here that it would really benefit Carmel in its decision making. But as Melanie says, most of what we need to do is find the money to make the recommendations that the scientists are already presenting to us. So I'm just a little confused, and I'm also late to the game, but I just started reading this survey, and it was just a lot of fluff, and I didn't quite understand how it could get used for the benefit of the city. Thank you.
I can also respond a little bit, but I don't. Okay, I'll take a quick shot. Is that, I mean, the purpose of the survey too is to also get the public involved and to get the public knowledgeable that this is happening, and it's part of, like we said prior, that it's part of adopting a local coastal plan amendment. So it's a planning document that the Coastal Commission also approves, as well as the city here, and so the questions in the survey, like things about surfing, as time goes on and the sea level rises, the surf will change. And so the survey is intended to say, well, do I go down to the beach to surf? Do I go down to the beach to play at the volleyball courts, or do I walk my dog? You know, they're just trying to get an idea of the users of the beach. And the scientists will take that information, and then they have to, you know, work with the city and the public and everybody to figure out ways to go, okay, well, this portion of the beach is really important to people, and you know, and the seawalls, you know, on certain portions of the beaches are currently, you know, can in the future be eroded, and will the Coastal Commission, you know, work with us to figure out different adaptations to you know, work with this. So it's information that is fed to our scientists, and then the scientists will be presenting different ideas that they have for the community to go, okay, you know, this one works. Like, I don't want sand to be imported on Carmel Beach, or, you know, certain things that they just really want to find out what everybody that uses the beach and the community finds to be the most important thing. So it's, the biggest thing for me is I do want the word to get out. I do want people to know this is happening, and we want your input. We really need the community to get involved, because it has been going along, and there just hasn't been a whole lot of public input, I guess. So, and if Val, if there's anything you wanted to add. Yeah. I can't see you, but. No, that's great, Mary. Okay. And well, just like quickly, the survey, like I said before, is a teaching tool, and so we'll be able to use it to teach people about these strategies. And I think just like sort of repeating what Mary said, bringing up this vocabulary will then help get people started. Because this, the predictions are for not very long from now. Okay.
There's many people that would probably say there's way better ways to educate people on language and solutions, like versus a survey. I think it's just trying to get what do people know today. You know, and if you did this, I think you would say maybe as a wish, right, would be if you ran this 5 years from now, the same thing, I think you would hope that more people would have, demonstrate higher experience and knowledge of some of the things you're presenting, right? Like you trend-wise,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
I guess the only question, and sitting here thinking, we don't capture anywhere how satisfied people feel about the city's current management of the beach after storms, et cetera. Would it be worthwhile capturing that likely negative sentiment? Because I shouldn't say negative, capturing that sentiment, because I do think, you know, there was a really interesting article in the Monterey Herald right over the break, the holiday break, about that pier, the pier that got lost, and there was a fabulous interview by the Public Works Director of Santa Cruz County about that, and you know, a lot of the residents and community feels frustrated that there's been deferred maintenance. I mean, if you read it, it sounded maybe a little bit similar to sometimes what we hear here. So I wonder if we could capture that. It would be adding a question.
Yeah, I do think that the consultants originally had something like that in the survey, and the previous director had, you know, suggested that that might not be the best focus because people might go off about that.
Well, I think if you put it at the end, I think that's it's good to, I mean, if you're asking people about how do I use the beach, what parts of the beach do I use?
To access,
Are you aware of like revetment, these different types of things? It's fair to say, right? How satisfied with you are with the
Sure, we can add
the way
that back
yeah.
in. That's fine. I think the consultants were, you know, interested in having definitely, that information in
That's
there.
a good. I mean, I think that's a good sentiment to.
Yeah, we can.
I'm happy to
help with
send
that.
you a question suggestion if you want, but okay. Okay, I think that wraps that up. We will move on. We have two last items that will not have public comment. The first is, Justin, your forester's report.
Yeah, did that require an action?
Yeah, it does.
Oh. To move forward with the survey?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion to move forward with the survey with the minor modifications that were discussed here in chambers?
And time, like how often.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the modifications as seen in this document.
I second it.
And can you include the, is it possible for you to include the fielding 3 times and 30-day windows, or, yeah?
The what now?
The timing of like how often you want it.
Oh, do we want, okay. And I'll probably talk about what the actual motion is too. I'd like to make a motion to approve the coastal adaptation project survey with its recent additions and edits, and to put this out as a survey 3 times in the coming year, once during the winter, perhaps once during the spring, once during the summer, and those months to be determined.
I second it.
I just want to make sure I got that all right. Commissioner Burling?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey?
Yes.
Commissioner Jerry?
Yes.
Thank you. This motion is passed.
Thank you, Justin, for keeping us on track. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, my turn.
Yes.
Oh, all right. All right. This is the December 2024 Foresters Report that also encompasses a year-long summary. In December, staff held interviews with 3 environmental consultant firms to select a CEQA consultant for the administrative draft of the draft forest management plan. One of the 3 was selected, and they were notified this week. We also received editable documents from Davie Resource Group and have now committed to fully taking on the final revision and publication of the forest management master plan. And those edits, the final edits will encompass all the revisions from the October 2024 meetings. In terms of our contractors, the landscape contractor Town and Country has been continuing to provide landscape maintenance throughout the city, as well as starting to take over management of the scenic pathway. And we've also issued task orders for watering trees to have them start doing that now. And we're going to get to the irrigation box on scenic. Taupes Tree Service, the city contractor, has been continuing on a large task order of 40 trees. They're about halfway done, and they should be finished by the end of this month, beginning of February. And new task orders are being compiled for West Coast Arborist and Community Tree Service, and at least one of those focusing on getting a lot of stumps out. In terms of the city crews, they performed a very large, for the CIP project on rebuilding the failed San Antonio pathway between 2nd and 4th. They cleared some vegetation by the Pebble Beach Gate so they could continue repairing that pathway to be open for the AT&T Pro-Am. As of the totals for last year, the city, as the city tree crews removed 193 trees, which is a 5% reduction. In year over year, they removed 112 stumps, an 86% increase, not including the contractors for the stumps contractors took out in 2023. They pruned 228 trees, which is a 21% decrease. They planted 174 trees, which is a 67% increase from 2023. We received 391 permit applications, a 4% increase. We resolved 336 permit applications, a 16% increase from 2023, calendar year. 231 private trees were permitted for removal in 2024, which is a 32% decrease from calendar year 2023. And we required 231 trees to be replanted, which is 100%, it was a 2% decrease from last year. We received 2,270 tickets in Fresh Desk, which is a 5% increase, and resolved 2,619, a 24% increase. So just for last month, we received 26 permits, processed 29 permits. I performed 9 site visits, resulting in 8 pruning permits, 19 tree removal permits, 12 upper canopy, 7 lower canopy, with a replanting ratio of 14 uppers and 12 lowers. As you can see, our replanting requirements are higher than in years past, 2013 to 2022, but 2023 was a historic year for tree permits and tree removals. This is just graphs of what was submitted, and that concludes my report. With the holidays, and I was sick after coming back from the holidays, I do not have the data on the catch-up, and I'm going to add that as charts to next month's Forester's report, as a tracking of all the dead, dying, and
to catch up what we presented
yes.
to City Council.
Yeah.
When is the time that you get to ask for next year's budget?
At next year's budget.
We start planning for that in the coming months.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just seems that forestry management and wildfire preparedness is going to become an increasingly high priority for jurisdictions.
Oh, definitely.
And I think last year you presented to City Council a plan
Mm-hmm.
that said, we know we have, it was a 3-year catch-up plan for deferred maintenance of just the public trees,
I
right,
know.
in the city. And so the idea was that forestry received more money last year to fund sort of what you thought would be a third of the catch-up
Mhm.
in 2025, with the expectation that you would get a similar budget for 2026 and 2027 because you thought it was going to take 3 years to get all that caught up. I think it's a really fair question to be asking the city council. Should they be accelerating some of that catch-up, right? Is it, and whether it's possible for you to execute it, if it was implemented, if it was possible.
Yes, that's
Right?
a very good
Because I
question.
think that's those are two separate things,
Mhm.
right? But the amount of work known work that needs to be caught up is high. And
The problem I'm running into is it's a fluid situation because, trees aren't just static beings.
Right.
They're living dynamic processes. So the problem is we're removing trees that are dead, but when we go back into our data, those trees were marked as good. And we're not truly capturing the numbers, and that's what I'm trying to figure out how to show or how to.
So it's always going to be fluid, right? But
Yeah.
you have a base group of trees that you identified as dead or very poor or needing removal.
Yes.
And you will have new poor trees always coming in,
Yeah.
just based on the age of our forest. But those new poor trees need to get added to the catch-up plan. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, exactly.
But
So-
tracking against that, I think, is really important because the one thing when I talked to Justin this week that I thought was also really important was you mentioned, right? For 7 months, we've had an assistant city forester position open, and having that filled is really important to being able to make strong, steady progress on the catch-up. But we've admitted, right, we're a couple of years behind. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so this just isn't a great time to be behind.
No,
right? So I think
it's
this
not.
might be an opportunity to get more resources, to get the forester position filled, to help us get, as a city, get caught up.
I
right?
understand totally. And we got all of our. I was at the SAW store yesterday, and we got all of our weed whackers serviced and ready to go. So we're ready to start hitting everything in town after the first couple of rains and when the weeds come up.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Any additional comments or questions? Okay. Moving on to
Just any progress yet? Anything going on with hiring of new staff? I know we need anything in the works that you can mention.
We are getting a maintenance worker for the forestry department. We've gone through and interviewed, and I believe we've made an offer. So I think we're moving forward with the maintenance worker. We currently, if you've been into Public Works, we have Archana, who's our temporary permit tech, but we do have that position that's open as well, as well as we have not gone out for this assistant city forester position yet, because I believe it needs to go to the city council first, and so that has not happened yet.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's probably the one that's going to be most beneficial, I believe.
Right.
Well, they all are beneficial, but that will really,
For Justin.
really
For the administration
Justin,
side is
yeah.
kind of where the bottleneck is. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Right.
we have the contract money, we have a tree crew, but processing what needs to get done is the hard
Right.
part. But I'm excited about who we've decided to offer the job
good.
to
Okay.
for the maintenance worker. So
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Moving along to the, no, we don't.
No.
So moving along to the Public Works Director.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Report. Thank you.
Yeah. So I this is the Public Works report for December, and I'm just going to jump down this city council meeting. If you attended, there really wasn't anything that was related to forestry in that. And then we also have the commission meeting that we had last December. And the next item down is the volunteer groups, which includes Carmel Cares. And it's very general in that they've continued to regularly pick up trash at the beach and in downtown Carmel. And the garden club has been working to maintain the city hall gardens. I believe that's a newer thing that they started.
They redid this garden. I don't know if you noticed, but the garden right outside the door was from a private donor, and they redid the whole thing. So they've revitalized it and refreshed it.
Yeah. And then the Friends of Mission Trail has also continued to clean brush throughout the preserve throughout the month. They continue to have large piles, and Public Works comes and helps take those piles. And so we have an ongoing thing with cleaning out the mission trails. In environmental programs, we cleaned out our CDS units, which are our continuous deflector separator units, which is what captures all the trash and everything, and we typically do it before the big rains. And so we had done that. We work with the Carmel Area Wastewater District to kind of do that. And then I'm going to jump over to the third page, and for the shoreline infrastructure repair project, that's separate from the coastal engineering project. So this is the one that Javier Hernandez is working on with our consultants to do specific repairs on the beach. And so that contract is moving forward, and we've selected Moffitt & Nichol as our consultant, and we're negotiating the contract, and that's going to be brought to the City Council in the next month. And the Mission Trail Nature Preserve 3 drainage project, that project also was completed at the end of the year, last year. So that was kind of a big one. And then we did have a grant that we got like $173,000, something like that, from the state, and that money came through. So that was a big positive thing that Val helped out with getting that. And then in street maintenance, I said previously, we removed piles of debris. That's kind of a continuous thing that the street maintenance crew does. And then they also have been placing wood chips on the trails at Mission Trails Nature Preserve. So that concludes my director's report.
Thank you, Mary. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Does anybody have any future agenda items?
Everybody speak up.
Okay. I think I'll just note as a point of information for our group that we hope that at the at next month's Forest and Beach, we'll be in a position to be talking about dates to schedule the next steering committee meeting on the Carmel Forest Master Plan, which we would likely be aiming for the early part of first of like March, as opposed to the end of February. It'd probably be early March. Nikki is working on drafting. She had her surgery today, so she'll be back in a few weeks.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. With that, no other business or comments. With that, I think our meeting is adjourned.
Good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Did we approve the meeting minutes from last time?